I was out at 4 a.m., cutting a teenager from a wreck twisted like scrap metal, when my worst neighbor decided it was the perfect time to rob me. She thought my house was empty. What she didn't know was that Rex, my retired K-9 partner, was waiting inside. My name's Jake. I've been a paramedic for over 15 years, living in a quiet Arizona suburb where every house looks like it was stamped out of the same mold. I bought my place after my divorce, hoping for peace. Instead, I found Brenda, the president of our HOA and the self-appointed ruler of the neighborhood. Brenda was the type of woman who patrolled the streets in her Lexus like it was a tank. She lived for rules, fines, and humiliating people who dared to step out of line. If your trash bin was out an hour late, she'd know. If your lawn wasn't perfectly cut, you'd get a notice. First, I tried to ignore her. I figured she was just another overbearing HOA president, the kind who needed to feel important. But then she started targeting me personally. It began with letters about unauthorized modifications when I installed simple security cameras. Then she tried to claim my German Shepherd, Rex, a retired K-9 I adopted, was dangerous, even though he mostly lounged in the sun like a furry statue. Something told me this wasn't going to stop with petty warnings. Brenda had her eyes locked on me. Once Brenda decided I was her target, it felt like every week brought a new violation. One day it was my porch light supposedly being too bright. The next it was my truck not being community aesthetic. Meanwhile, Rex, 85 pounds of calm, disciplined muscle, just sat by the window watching her car crawl past like she owned the street. He didn't bark. He didn't flinch. But I could see it in his eyes. He was waiting for the day she crossed the line. And believe me, she was getting close. Brenda even brought a man around, her so-called certified inspector. Greasy, shifty-eyed, the kind of guy who looked like he belonged in a mugshot, not measuring people's property. They tried inspections without notice, took pictures of my home, and even jiggled my doorknobs when they thought no one was watching. I reviewed the footage from my security cameras, and sure enough, there they were, testing my doors in broad daylight. It didn't feel like HOA business anymore. It felt like reconnaissance. And the worst part? Neighbors started whispering that Brenda had pulled the same stunts before, targeting veterans, widows, and anyone who couldn't fight back. She'd push them until they broke. But I wasn't planning to break. After a brutal 24-hour shift, 2 overdoses, a cardiac arrest, and a rollover accident, I dragged myself home, smelling of diesel and adrenaline. And who was waiting in my driveway? Brenda and her inspector, clipboard in hand, like vultures circling a dying animal. "Mr. Thornfield," she announced, her smile as fake as her perfume. "We're conducting an emergency property assessment." Emergency? At my front door? After a day where I'd literally saved lives. This woman thought the real crisis was my porch railing? When her inspector grabbed my doorknob like he owned it, Rex erupted. His deep growl vibrated through the walls, claws scraping against the wood as if he'd dig through to get them. I stepped between them and my home. "Touch my property again, and you'll regret it." Brenda's smile faltered for a moment, but then she leaned in, whispering, "We'll be back, with proper authorization." That was when I knew. This wasn't about HOA rules. This was about power. She wasn't trying to keep lawns trimmed. She was trying to control me, and maybe worse. And eventually, she'd go too far. It happened on a night when fate stacked the deck against me. I was scheduled for another overnight shift, leaving my house dark and quiet. Perfect bait. What Brenda didn't know was that Rex was inside. At 2 a.m., my back camera caught it. Brenda creeping up with a crowbar, her inspector slinking behind her with a flashlight. She jimmied the lock, her hands shaking with greed and arrogance. The door creaked open. She stepped inside, heels clicking on my kitchen tile like she owned the place. And that's when she met Rex. He didn't bark right away. That's not how trained K9s work. He positioned himself in the hallway, ears forward, eyes locked on hers, a low growl rising from his chest like thunder rolling across the desert. Brenda froze. "Nice doggy," she whispered, backing toward the door. Rex took one deliberate step forward, teeth bared, the sound in his throat promising consequences if she moved the wrong way. The inspector panicked, stumbling into a chair that clattered to the floor. Rex launched, stopping inches from Brenda, pinning her with the kind of stare only a police dog can give. The kind that says, "You are not leaving here unscathed." Brenda screamed, and outside my cameras caught every second. When I got home that morning, exhausted but curious why my motion alerts were going crazy, I opened the footage, and my jaw dropped. There she was, Brenda, breaking into my home with a crowbar. And there was Rex, holding her hostage in my kitchen without laying a tooth on her. The video was gold. I called the police, calmly explaining I had evidence of an attempted burglary. When officers arrived, Brenda tried her usual victim act, sobbing, saying she was conducting HOA business. That excuse didn't fly once I pulled up the footage. The officer's expression changed the moment they saw her prying my back door, then stumbling back as Rex growled her into submission. "Ma'am," one officer said, "you're under arrest for attempted burglary and trespassing." Her face twisted into something between rage and disbelief. For once, she wasn't in control. And the inspector? Turned out he had priors for burglary. The neighborhood tyrant had finally tripped over her own arrogance, and Rex had been the perfect witness. The news spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. The mighty HOA president had been caught red-handed, not writing fines, but breaking and entering. Neighbors who had suffered under her reign came out of the woodwork, each with their own story of harassment. Petty fines, threats, intimidation, it was all part of her game. But now, Brenda was facing real consequences. The HOA board voted unanimously to remove her. Her Lexus sat abandoned in her driveway, a silent monument to her downfall. The inspector? He pled guilty, dragging her deeper into the mess. And Rex? He became the local hero. Kids brought him treats. Neighbors called him the sheriff. Every time Brenda's old Lexus got towed away, Rex sat on my porch, chest out, like he knew justice had been served. Looking back, I realized something. People like Brenda always underestimate their victims. She thought I was just another tired paramedic too worn out to fight back. She thought Rex was just another dog. She was wrong on both counts. The lesson? Document everything. Know your rights. And never, ever let a bully dictate how you live in your own home. Brenda learned that the hard way, when her own arrogance landed her in handcuffs, humiliated in front of the very neighbors she once terrorized. And Rex? He sleeps soundly at the foot of my bed. The same dog who once chased down criminals with the police now protecting my home from a suburban tyrant. So, what would you do if your HOA president broke into your home while you were out?